Right, obviously, firstly we need a tent. Secondly, we need some Fabsil. We also need something to put it in and a clean paintbrush. So this is the boring bit where you get to see me erect a tent. So I'm going to fast forward through all that bit. What I can tell you, this tent I paid about 15 quid for in a sale from Aldi, and it's not a bad bit of kit. Right, that's obviously the tent set up. Fabsil do two types of the old protector. They do the Fabsil Universal and they do a Fabsil Gold. Now I know the Gold is even more high water repellency. However, what I noticed on the Gold, it doesn't have the UV protection. As you can see on there, includes UV protection, whereas on the Gold it doesn't have that. But anyway, it's simple, it's your choice, but I like to think that if I use the one with the UV protection, it helps obviously with the sun rays, makes the tents last longer, so I believe. But yeah, so next step, I'm just going to decant it into an old jug and just paint it on. It does say leave a wet edge. Now my interpretation of that is when you're going from seam to seam, you don't just stop halfway through, you go all the way, so obviously it doesn't dry out before you continue, you know what I mean. That's my interpretation. You'll see as I go along anyway. So give it a good shake. Bing bang bosh. I only pour in small amounts at a time. I rather add more than pour obviously dirty Fabsil back into the bottle. And it's simply just a case of what I do like to do is get proper into the stitches, so if you have loads of rain for a sustained period of time, get my words out, you can then obviously be rest assured that your stitching isn't going to rot. Now you are supposed to leave it to dry for 6 hours. What I tend to do if I'm doing this and it says it's going to rain, and I do, once it's obviously soaked in and whatnot and it's not going to run anymore, I don't leave it outside. I'll take the fly sheet and I'll go and hang it indoors, carry on drying indoors. And I'll make sure it's completely dry before I pack it away. and that is what I believe to be there, a wet edge. So obviously just keep that edge wet so you don't get any lines. Anyway, I don't need to film the whole lot. I'm basically going to do it from section at a time. Like I say, keeping that edge wet. And when I've done it all, I'll bring you back. Right, so I've now completely covered the whole lot from top to bottom with Fabsil. As I said before, I do like to really soak it into these stitches. Again, if you've got the seams, I do like to really get the Fabsil in there. It tells you once you've finished to get a microfiber cloth or equivalent and wipe it all over to even it out, but I personally have had no issue. I just paint it on and I even it out with the paintbrush, and it seems to, you know, it looks really silky and wet now, but it won't take long to dry. But yeah, that's quite simply how you Fabsil a tent in a nutshell. Also, I'd like to point out, I know I haven't staked it all down properly, I haven't put the guy lines out and stuff like that, because quite frankly, for what I'm doing, it doesn't need it. It doesn't matter whether the guy lines get Fabsil on them, it's only going to add to the water repellency. I put a not a ground sheet, I put a tarp underneath just to keep the bottom dry, so it's better for packing away. That's something I always do. Normally, if I was pitching the tent, you wouldn't have any of it sticking out, obviously, because then what you'll get is, if it rains, you'll get runoff, which will then sit underneath between the tarp and the ground sheet of the tent. I've covered this before in videos. But yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll just leave that to dry.